This is something where we don't actually expect a huge impact.
Right now, U.S. trade leaders are downplaying the potential impacts of President Trump's renewed tariff threats against Canada, which would hit imported cars, trucks, and steel with a 50% tax starting next year. Thanks for joining us at 5 on air and streaming. I'm Lauren Lemanchak.
And I'm Kevin Holmes. Now, the escalation follows another wave of tariffs hitting Canada over the weekend, and Canadian officials say they will retaliate.
Government data shows Canada is the third highest source of U.S. imports, totaling more than $380 billion last year alone. But the tariff battle could have a much larger impact here in Minnesota, since Canada is our state's top trading partner. Gordon Severson leads us off now tonight. Gordon?
Yeah, the tariffs that went into effect over the weekend focus on a unique assortment of Canadian goods, ranging from honey and alcohol to cement and hockey sticks. Right now, economists say these tariffs won't break the bank for many Minnesota families, but they are concerned that if this trade war escalates, it could be especially painful here in Minnesota. The tricky thing about trade wars is the threats on both sides, with leaders throwing out massive numbers, like President Trump's recent threat to pass a 50% tariff on the Canadian auto industry.
Is this posturing? Is this really going to happen?
Scott Lambert with the Minnesota Automobile Dealers Association says leaders in the auto industry are holding steady, waiting to see if that tariff actually comes true like the president says. If it does happen, he says it would have an impact on the price of parts and new vehicles.
The Canadian and U.S. auto businesses are fully integrated between parts and production. It's going to be hard to separate them.
But there are other industries, especially locally, that could be hit hard if this trade war escalates. According to the Canadian government, Minnesota imports nearly $13 billion in goods from Canada every year, and 65% of that is energy, like fuel and electricity.
In a rural state like Minnesota, those energy prices really hit hard. I mean, they hit farmers, they hit producers.
Matt Verelik is the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. He's worried Canada will retaliate with their own tariffs. And if their list includes categories like energy, agriculture, and building materials, Minnesota businesses could be more affected than other states.
As a border state, we feel this more acutely. As a border state, we have probably deeper relationships with Canada, both culturally and economically.
It's that back and forth that we worry about.
University of St. Thomas economics professor Tyler Schipper is also worried about an escalating trade war and how it could affect long-term relationships with our neighbor to the north.
Canada is one of the countries that has been least likely to back down, which kind of raises the prospects that this gets worse rather than getting better.
So again, the tariffs that went into effect over the weekend only affects about 5% of the goods that the U.S. imports from Canada. But the question is, what happens next? Do both sides come back to negotiate, or is this just the beginning?
Time will tell. Gordon, thank you.